Welcome to History Explained, where we illuminate the past to better understand our present. I'm your guide for this weekly journey, 7 days of global change in under 7 minutes. Today is Wednesday, July 9, 2025, and this is World Events, our look at the defining global developments from the week behind us, seen through the lens of historical context and long-term impact. This week, the world felt in motion, strategically, economically, and climatically, as nations redrew old lines and tested new alliances. We begin in Eastern Europe, where NATO formally invited Bosnia and Herzegovina to begin accession talks during the July 2 ministerial in Brussels. It's a historic shift for a country still haunted by the scars of war in the 1990s. This move signals the West's accelerating commitment to Balkan security in the face of growing Russian influence in Serbia. It echoes the post-Cold War wave of NATO expansion, particularly the 2004 inclusion of the Baltics, which permanently altered the European security map. For Bosnia, the path won't be easy, but the door is now open. Meanwhile, in West Africa, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, announced on July 3 that it will establish a joint peacekeeping mission in response to escalating instability in Mali and Burkina Faso. This regional military initiative, dubbed Sahel Shield, marks a decisive shift from reliance on UN and French forces. It draws a line back to the African Union's early peacekeeping attempts in the 2000s and the failures in Rwanda and Darfur that preceded them. ECOWAS is betting that African problems require African solutions, backed by unified force. On July 4, the United States and Vietnam signed a landmark bilateral trade and security agreement in Hanoi, deepening ties amid rising tensions in the South China Sea. The pact includes maritime patrol cooperation, technology transfers, and significant trade incentives for U.S. companies shifting supply chains out of China. The irony is striking: two former war adversaries aligning to navigate a new Cold War dynamic in Asia. Much like Nixon's opening to China in the 1970s, this deal is less about friendship and more about strategic geometry. In Australia, a brutal heatwave drove national temperatures past historic records, peaking at 48.3 degrees Celsius, 119 degrees Fahrenheit, on July 5. The climate emergency triggered rolling blackouts across Queensland and mass evacuations from vulnerable regions. The government's decision to invoke a federal disaster declaration marks the first climate-driven national mobilization since the 2020 bushfires. As the frequency of extreme weather events climbs, Australia's experience is beginning to resemble California's in the 2010s, a warning and a preview of the Anthropocene reality. And finally, in space, the African Union successfully launched its first multi-nation satellite, AfriSat-1, from a pad in French Guiana on July 6. Built collaboratively by engineers from Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and Ethiopia, the satellite will provide agricultural and climate monitoring data across the continent. It's more than a technical achievement, it's a geopolitical one. Much like the European Space Agency in the 1970s, AfriSat represents a statement that scientific sovereignty matters. In a century defined by data, orbit is territory. From NATO's eastward pivot to ECOWAS's armed cooperation, from heatwaves on land to alliances in orbit, this week's world events revealed a deeper truth: that history moves not just through conflict, but through coordination, and sometimes, through catastrophe. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of World Events. If these stories reshaped how you see the global landscape, subscribe, share, and tell us in the comments, which development from this week will leave the deepest mark on history? Tomorrow, we journey into traditions and identity in cultural insights. Until then, I'm your guide for History Explained, where understanding yesterday is the key to navigating tomorrow.